Hello and welcome to the Field of Streams podcast for Friday, July 1st. I'm your host, Dylan Higgins, joined by my co-host, Brad Johnson. Brad, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We are here for another Friday morning show, doing our live broadcast like we've been doing all year with our got a live chat going there on the site and got this live broadcast going. We are joined today by Matt Hunter. Matt is the creator of SaberSim and also works over at Rotographs. Matt, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks.
Yeah, glad to have you join us. Trying to get more Rotographs riders in here, as many as we can, guys from the site. But also, yeah, you mentioned to me that you work on SaberSim, and I definitely have heard of SaberSim, but I know Brad uses it a lot. But Matt, can you tell us a little bit about SaberSim, what it is, how it works?
Yeah. So basically, how it started was a few years ago. I was doing some writing, blogging for Hardball Times and Fangraphs, and I wanted to just build a baseball simulator, just sort of for fun and for research purposes and stuff. So, yeah, I built this like play-by-play simulator and ended up kind of turning it into a tool for daily fantasy and just sports predictions and stuff. So basically, it takes each game, takes the starting pitchers and projected lineups, and then the confirmed lineups once they're posted, and simulates them play by play, like 10,000 times. Uses the park factors and the weather and all that, and keeps track of all the stats, and then spits out the results. So the nice thing about it is it doesn't just return the average stats for each player. It actually has a full distribution of projected DFS points and home runs and anything like that, so you can really kind of take advantage of players with upside and the tails of distributions and stuff like that.
It sounds like something that seems obvious that you think would have been done, before, but it just makes a lot of sense. It's surprising that we hadn't seen that yet. But yeah, so you had a lot of success with it so far?
Yeah, this year I've kind of focused a bit more on the tools and have some cool ways that you can use the distributions to kind of build lineups on the conditional that like a player will hit a home run or that a player will score a certain number of points. So it's a better way to do stacking or to fade pitchers or build your lineups around certain players, stuff like that. So I've had success with it.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff, and definitely pretty useful for DFS. Brad, as you write about DFS every day, I know you use SaberSim as part of your analysis. It's been pretty useful for you as well.
Yeah, it's a nice tool. It's good for what I like to do is every morning when I'm going through pitcher picks for daily grind, I do that without looking at SaberSim, and then I pull up the SaberSim results, try to get a smell check of what looks weird to me, what maybe I missed, and try to figure out what's going on with the discrepancies. This morning I noticed Wade LeBlanc was fairly highly favored by SaberSim. That was one of the ones that gave me a chuckle. But I think I already saw that he's been adjusted down quite a bit since when I looked.
Yeah, I think we mentioned him last week too. But yeah, it's nice to have something that is blind like that. That you might have your biases, or you might look at it with your eyes of what you think is going to happen, and then having a simulator that can catch things that maybe fell between the cracks is pretty cool. Brad, you also have a Daily Grind Invitational going on today?
Yep, it's over on FanDuel. The cap was at 20 people, unfortunately, so get in quickly.
Yeah, you can find the link. It's in the post on Rotographs. Also, Brad's on Twitter at BaseballAteam has the link there. Those been going pretty well still?
Yeah, going well. Keeping track. We got a nice core group that shows up every day and competes. It's fun. There's
Cool.
some good banter on the in the comments and on Twitter too.
Yeah, if you want to play DFS with regular Rotographs players and people who read Brad and other Rotographs people, you can join up over there at at the Daily Grind Invitational. So check that out. All right, we're gonna get into these Friday games here in a bit. First of all, I just want to talk about the Cleveland Indians won't stop winning, apparently. 13 wins in a row now, just kind of ridiculous. Kind of exciting. I feel like they're a generally pretty likable team as well, and it's cool to see them do well, especially with a lot of the country excited about Cleveland in general winning. So it's a good thing that's going on in the city. Um, Matt, was there anything about the Indians that stuck out to you, or just what's going on in baseball lately before we jump into this DFS stuff?
I mean, not too much. It's been cool to see Francisco Lindor really, break through. I mean, he was great last year as well, so it's great to see him not regress too much and really live up to his potential. So, I mean, that's been fun. And then, yeah, as far as baseball, I mean, Kershaw going on the DL is big news. That's obviously a best
Kind
pitcher
of a
in the
bummer for
world.
everybody.
So, yeah, it's a bummer. But hopefully it doesn't. I don't actually know how long he's supposed to be there, but hopefully
Yeah.
not long.
A lot of question marks.
It's described as a fairly minor injury, at least at this stage.
Hopefully.
I'm guessing
Yeah.
probably not too much more than the minimum, but they'll also want to be careful with making sure that he's all the way back.
And it felt a little strategic to me being right around the All-Star break too, possibly. I'm just realizing they're not going to miss that many starts from him if they give him a break now. So, Brad, do you have anything else before we get into these games for Friday?
No, let's get down to it.
All right, cool. So Friday, July 1st. There's two games actually we're going to skip today in the afternoon. The Indians going to Toronto looking for their 14th win in a row. That's happening earlier than all the other games. Probably won't fit your DFS slate. We're going to ignore that. And then the Reds going to Washington are an hour earlier too, and that probably doesn't fit either. So we're just going to do the 13 games after that. That probably fit most of your slates. So Brad, let's start with you at catcher. I actually didn't have a ton of names at catcher. I don't know how you did today. But how does it look behind the plate for Friday?
Yeah, I didn't pull out too many that really excited me. Top end of the scale, you got Buster Posey at Shelby Miller. That's in Arizona, so decent power pick today. Another power pick, Brian McCann up against Colin Ray in San Diego, where I like to point out because everyone thinks of Petco as a pitcher's park, but the factors for left-handed hitter power is still above average. I think it's 106 off the top of my head. So not really hurting McCann that much. If he does happen to get under one, send it deep. And then the other guy I like a little bit further down the list, Tyler Flowers, showing good power since mid-May, hitting something like 255, 320, 500, and 5 homers in that time. Hard hit rates up above 40%. He's up against Justin Nicolino, a guy who, not really getting any swings and misses. That's the big problem in Flowers' game. So I think it's a really good matchup for him.
Yeah, Flowers I was looking at because he typically has hit lefties a lot in the past. He's not this year, but
Right.
I'm not personally worried about it. I think it's going to be fine. I would trust, as usual, the longer run of what he's done than just, what he's done the last few months. I think it's good that he's hitting overall and should be fine against lefties. So anybody that's going to hit lefties, I like against Nicolino. Unfortunately, it's have the Braves to pick from today. Matt, did you have anyone at catcher that Brad did not mention?
The only other guy that I want to bring up is Josh Fegley. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But yeah, I mean, he's really cheap on actually on DraftKings and FanDuel. He's 3,200 on DraftKings, and he's like the fourth projected on SaberSim. But he's going against who was it?
Jeff Locke.
Jeff Locke. Yeah, Jeff Locke. And yeah, I mean, the A's are at least SaberSim's projecting them to score a lot of runs tonight, so I think he could be kind of a nice sneaky pick, especially. I think the same deal is with McCann, in a pitcher's park, especially kind of a West Coast game. I think those players are often a little under-owned in DFS, so those can be some good sneaky picks with upside.
Yeah, I like those. Fegley's an old favorite of this podcast because he used to hit lefties so well, and he hasn't as much this year, but I think he probably can against Jeff Locke. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good matchup for him, and again, trying to trust those older skills of hitting lefties as opposed to what he's done necessarily in recent months. So yeah, I like that. He should get in there too. The only other catcher I had you guys didn't mention is Salvador Perez getting Jeremy Hellickson. Hellickson's okay, but Perez has actually been hitting righties pretty well this year. There's not a lot else about the Royals lineup I'm not excited about, but I think Perez is an okay option. Getting Hellickson and the Phillies bullpen, especially in Philadelphia, so I would consider that. All right, on to first base. Matt, do you want to get started? Who are your favorite picks at first base?
So first base, I mean, all of my favorite picks are pretty expensive, but I mean, Ortiz is kind of an obvious choice. You know, they're in Fenway, and I think it's against Jhoulys Chacin, who's not been very good. But I think actually Hanley on the same team, it might be, you know, a nice pick, especially from the ownership point of things, because they're both the same position. So if everyone goes Ortiz in that game, then you know, Hanley could be a good alternative to that and a bit cheaper. And then outside of that, I actually like Rizzo today, who's going against DeGrom, but he's the third first baseman on SaberSim, so, you know, again, won't be owned by as many lineups, but I think still has the great upside, you know, lefty against DeGrom, so.
Yeah, I don't mind that. That's kind of a case of trusting the talent more than the matchup.
Yeah.
You know, I agree that I shied away a little bit. I saw DeGrom on the slate, but I don't think it's a thing that you have to go away from. He's too good to really to ever totally shy away. Brad, what were you thinking at first base?
Yeah, I got a couple picks just like that. There wasn't really a bargain that stood out to me. I have a column I write for Roto World bargain picks, and the guy I picked out for first base is actually AJ Reed at 2,400. He doesn't have a hit yet. I really don't advocate using him in general, but if you're trying to get someone super cheap with power potential, Reed's got Miguel Gonzalez. If he's going to hit a home run, it's probably against Miguel Gonzalez. Homer-prone pitcher, homer-prone park. So it's that's your bargain for the day. Otherwise, kind of like Rizzo, you got Paul Goldschmidt up against Johnny Cueto. Cueto, obviously, a very good pitcher. Goldschmidt's price is fairly affordable. He's 4,400 on DraftKings, I think 3,900 on FanDuel. It's just like a solid price to own Goldschmidt at, I think. Similarly, you could try to go with Miguel Cabrera up against Drew Smyly. Again, it's a situation where the price isn't too bad. He's a little more expensive on DraftKings, where he's 4,900. I think just 3,700 on a FanDuel, so he's good value there. And then I really like Brandon Belt up against Shelby Miller. Miller's someone I've been taking a lot of advantage of this year. Looking a little better since coming back from the disabled list, but still like a lot of Giants tonight.
Yeah. I agree. The other thing about Miggy is he also hasn't hit lefties this year for some reason, but I'm not really that worried about it either. He's crushing righties, and it's not like he forgot how to work with the platoon advantage, you know?
Right.
So I find it curious, and it would make me think twice with Smyly, but I'm not completely shying away. That's something we've been tracking a little bit this year that seems curious, but I don't know why that would happen. I also wrote down Eric Hosmer getting Jeremy Hellickson. I think that's going to be just fine. I'm not worried about that. If I had a cheap option, I have two. I don't know how cheap they're going to be because, again, it's first base. I take Brandon Moss getting Matt Garza. Matt Garza's been back and he's been okay, but not enough that I'm that worried about picking against Matt Garza. And then Dae-Ho Lee getting Kevin Gausman. Dae-Ho Lee's kind of taken over that first base job in Seattle, which has been fun and exciting. And Gausman struggles with righties. He handles lefties better than righties, at least this year and in recent years. So I think right-handed Dae-Ho Lee, who's been hitting righties just fine too, could be an option against Kevin Gausman for sure there. I don't know. Kevin Gausman's been an interesting guy, especially to try and pick against with some weird splits.
One other guy I forgot, by the way, was Byung-Ho Park against Martin Perez.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the power potential there. Is, you know, it's very possible he'll go 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts or something, but I think there's just a lot of upside, and he's again really cheap.
Yeah, getting a lefty is a good place for him. That's definitely worth mentioning. All right, let's move on to the second base. Brad, how'd you do at second base? Where are you thinking of going?
Again, the guys I'm looking at are fairly expensive. I think this is in a bad day to have that happening. The pitchers, there's a lot of good ones available that are kind of mid-tier priced, so you can fit in some expensive guys in your lineup. That out of the way, Matt Carpenter did up against Matt Garza, Jose Altuve against Miguel Gonzalez. These are, top priced guys, but the matchups are also very high quality. And then Ian Kinsler up against Drew Smiley, another guy who a lot of potential, hitting lefties well, hitting well in general, and up atop that Tigers lineup. Smiley's going to be an interesting guy to watch tonight. Every time I try to stream against him, he turns in one of his good outings, and then I'll look at his next three, and they'll just be garbage.
Sure.
And usually when I'm picking against him, it is a team like the Tigers who have a ton of lefty matchers and still doesn't turn out well. So I've been burned personally trying to target Smiley. It doesn't mean that you can't.
Right.
It's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I like Kinsler. I like, especially as a leadoff guy, has been hitting really well, and I had confidence that people drive him in. I like him in good matchups, and that would be a good one. I have Justin Pedroia getting Alicia Scene. He's been hitting righties this year. Should be fine. Of course, Carpenter. Of course, Altuve. I want to mention Derek Dietrich getting Julio Teheran, and I forgot to mention Justin Bour as well. Teheran's having a fine year, but I still think you could pick on him with lefties. He still has that split. He's kind of always had that split. So left-handed Marlins, including Dietrich and Bour, should be all right. Matt, did you have any second baseman there that we did not come up with?
Dietrich was my favorite pick as far as value. I think similar to the Byung-Ho Park, Brian Dozier is going against lefty. He's a little expensive, so I'm not sure he's on DraftKings. On FanDuel he's cheap, so I would definitely go with him there. But again, going against Martin Perez, lefty, who's I think outperforming. His ERA is definitely outperforming his true talent. So a lot of upside potential there.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I also wrote down Jonathan Scope getting Wade LeBlanc. I'm not, despite what SaberSim might say before or after updates, I'm not that huge on Wade LeBlanc. And Jonathan Scope is, not suffering from bad splits. Not a great on base guy, but definitely has power. So kind of almost always an option. I would consider that. Did either of you have any second baseman we didn't get to before we move on?
No, Dietrich was also my bargain guy.
Yeah. Yep. I like that. I like that Teheran's having a better year. That's good to see. But just has had that weakness against lefties for a long time. So.
And one note about Teheran, the results are good. He's got like a 205 BABIP with none of the indicators you usually see with a low BABIP guy. Looks like he should regress right up to his career average and right up to a 4.0 ERA with that.
Yeah. So I'm fine with picking some Marlins against him for sure. All right, Matt. How about at third base? Where does SaberSim think you should go at third base?
So third base, the top option is, at least on DraftKings, is Matt Carpenter, who we've already talked about. And then for FanDuel, and this is my kind of value pick on DraftKings as well, is Danny Valencia, another Oakland player who I've mentioned. SaberSim likes him a lot, but he should have a great matchup against Locke and is pretty highly projected. So he's my favorite. Outside of him, Chris Bryant is, he's always got that home run potential, but going against DeGrom, that's obviously a riskier matchup. And then I like Luis Valbuena as well, who is against Miguel Gonzalez, who we mentioned is, prone to give up the long ball, I think. So.
Yeah, we mentioned Luis Valbuena a fair amount on this show. Just the guy that can definitely run into one. Not going to be that expensive, but could easily get 1 for 4 and a homer out of there.
Yep.
I like that, definitely. And I like that you mentioned Valencia. That's a favorite of mine. Anytime he gets a lefty, the A's offense is not that fun right now, but when they get lefties, there's some interesting guys to pick from, and one of those would be Valencia for sure. Yep. Brad, what are you thinking at third base?
The expensive guy I'm looking at, also a shortstop on DraftKings, Manny Machado up against Wade LeBlanc. I don't think that requires too much explanation, but Machado kills lefties. LeBlanc's probably a below average lefty. and game's in Seattle, so it's not a hitter's park, but every other factor skews in Machado's favor. So I really
Hmm.
like that matchup today. He's only 3,900 on FanDuel, so I expect him to be very popular, but also very affordable at the same time.
Yeah.
Another guy like Adrian Beltre, no platoon advantage, just righty on righty against Irvin Santana in Minnesota. Target field's not actually bad on righty power. It's the lefties that really get punished.
Hmm.
So I think Beltre's a guy who he's hitting well. Has shown power recently, so there's no concerns about slumps or anything like that. He's a quality hitter up against a guy he can hit, and shouldn't be very popular. So I think he should be a nice GPP play.
Yeah, and Santana knows how to give up homers, so
Yeah.
that's a pretty alright matchup for him. Even righty on righty, I'm like, it's Irvin Santana, it'll be fine, for sure. I had Johnny Peralta getting Matt Garza again. Matt Garza's looked okay so far, but I don't think he's turned back the clock. It would have to be
Mhm.
about 3 years by now. I think it's totally fine. Pick Johnny Peralta against him. Jake Lamb getting Johnny Cueto. For me, that's just like a fade. I like Jake Lamb just fine. But it's hard to pick against Cueto. If you're in a GPP and you want to get creative, I think you could hope that he could run into one there, especially in the desert. And then the last third baseman I had, Jung Oh Gung gets Sonny Gray. Brad, are you still picking against Sonny Gray? He's looked a little bit better lately. Or would you consider guys against him?
Yeah, he's kind of like Shelby Miller in that he's looked a little bit better.
Yeah,
Not enough that I'm afraid of going against him right now. I am afraid of using him, so for
yeah.
now, yeah, I think you can definitely target against him.
Yeah, and Chung Kong quietly having a really good year. I mean, he
Oh
came
yeah.
in late and has been pretty darn good. So I trust him. Even against righties, he's been fine. Did either of you have any third baseman we didn't get to?
Just wanted to mention on DraftKings specifically, Nolan Arenado is 3,800 against Bud Norris.
Mm,
DraftKings is a little odd with their pricing. They're very reactive to home away and handedness. So they're seeing Arenado on the road, and they're seeing him against a righty, and they've docked his price quite a bit. But very high quality hitter, not someone
yeah,
I'm concerned about power wise. Can easily get out of Dodger Stadium, even though it's a little tough on righties. And Bud Norris is still Bud Norris. Good numbers
yeah.
aside.
But Norris has been a little bit better lately, but
He,
not enough that
he
I'm,
has made some changes to his repertoire. There's things to like about that, but often that just means the league needs to adjust slightly.
yeah. And Arenado is pretty darn good. That even when he's in a bad matchup, I suppose, not the perfect, environment, I think he's going to be fine. So yeah, I think that's totally a place you consider going. All right, at shortstop, I had 6 names. I guess I had 7 names. I put Eduardo Nunez and Eduardo Escobar against Martin Perez. The Eduardos in Minnesota. They kind of are shuffling around where they play, but they can both hit lefties. So I consider both of them definitely they get a lefty. They get Martin Perez, and I think whichever one you want to go with, check your starting lineup, see where they're playing, see who gets in. But I like both of them just fine. Martin Perez is not great and doesn't strike anybody out, so I could see them doing okay there. Carlos Correa gets Miguel Gonzalez. There's not a lot to say about that. Miguel Gonzalez is the definition of a fifth starter right now. And Correa's looked pretty darn good, or he did in June. I guess it's July now. I wrote Aledmus Diaz getting Matt Garza again. The Cardinals can hit. Pick them against Matt Garza. I'm fine with any of those guys that you trust. My boy Jonathan Villar gets Jaime Garcia. He just keeps running and he hits lefties just fine. He's hitting most everything, but I like him against Jaime Garcia for sure, who is certainly a decent pitcher. It's not like a punching bag by any means. It's more just that I trust Jonathan Villar to get on base and probably run some too. My last 2 names, Brandon Crawford gets Shelby Miller. Shelby Miller came back maybe a little bit better. He allowed 7 runs last time out, though. I don't think he's by any means fixed. I have less faith there than Sonny Gray turning things around. So Brandon Crawford and the Giants that you like. I mean, that lineup's so beat up, it's not as exciting, but Brandon Crawford's still an option. And then my last shortstop name was Corey Seager getting Jorge De La Rosa, because even though it was lefty on lefty, I don't think he's scared of lefties at all. He can handle them, especially Jorge De La Rosa. And once they're done, it's the Rockies bullpen. I think that Corey Seager becoming almost a matchup-proof stud at times. So I like that. those are my shortstop options. Brad, did you have any that I did not mention?
Yeah, a couple big ones that I'm really keyed in on: Xander Bogaerts and Marcus Semien. So Bogart's up against
Hmm.
Jhoulys Chacin, and then Semien's against Jeff Locke, and he kills lefties. He's hitting well right now. Bogarts is hitting well. They're both solid plays tonight, even though the stadiums aren't perfect for them.
Yeah, I like that Semyon one. I missed that, but it's another one of those A's guys I like against lefties. That can definitely little power, little speed could be fine. And then Matt, did you or Saber Sim have anybody that we didn't get to?
I think you guys named off like 10 names, so probably not. I mean, Semyon was my favorite pick for today, just based on price and matchup. I mean, I liked Semyon yesterday, and he ended up hitting a home run against Bumgarner. So today against Locke is obviously an even better matchup. So I like him a lot. And then just looking at SaberSim, going down the list, kind of the best value is Brad Miller, who's against this for Detroit today, Fulmer, right? And
Yeah.
Fulmer's been really good, but you know, Brad Miller has a little pop and probably will not be super owned. So, you know, if you're looking for a little bit of a cheaper guy in DraftKings, then that's a good pick.
Yeah, I always feel like he's kind of a decent punt option at shortstop. If you
Yeah.
want to go cheap and get a guy who can hit a little bit, can run a little bit, has a little pop, as long as he gets a righty, not a lefty, you're like, okay, like yeah,
Yeah.
that's a guy. And if you're gonna go cheap at a spot, I think catcher and shortstop are just fine places to go with
Yeah.
cheap guys. So definitely an option. All right, we stole all the shortstops. Matt, you want to get us started in the outfield? I mean, there's plenty of names, plenty of places to go, but where do you and SaberSim think that we should start in the outfield, Matt?
Yeah. So, as is the case for, I'd say, the majority of days, Mike Trout is the top projected option by a lot. So he's going against Stephen Wright, who is, knuckleballer, one of those guys that is performing great, but projection systems are just always going to not like him as much as the results. I don't really know. Steamer has him as, I think, a over 4 ERA going forward. I don't really know what to trust, but it's Trout and it's Fenway, so I think he's a good option, and probably won't be as owned as he often is, just because Stephen Wright. And then going down the list, Mookie Betts. Again, it's not really much to say about him. He's good, and it's in Fenway. And then as far as cheaper options, Giancarlo Stanton is down to 3,400 on DraftKings, which just doesn't feel right seeing his price go that low. I know he's been terrible, but there's always an upside there. And then finally, I like Chris Davis on Oakland a lot. I've said a lot of Oakland players, but I think all these righties have great potential for home runs, and I like Chris Davis a lot. So those are my picks.
I like an A's right-handed stack for sure. If you want to go Fegley and Chris Davis and Valencia and Semien, like all good options there that could score some runs against Jeff Locke. Also an old favorite of the podcast back when he was more streamable, and now he's a guy you got to avoid a little bit. You mentioned Mookie Betts getting Chacin. How does SaberSim feel about Jackie Bradley? Are they still kind of adjusting to a guy who kind of changed his game in the last year? I mean, I think a lot of DFS players like him more.
Yeah, so I mean, SaberSim, I don't think I mentioned earlier, it kind of uses Steamer rest of season as sort of the base before applying all the adjustments and going through the sim. So I think Steamer, as well, hasn't really. He's been better, obviously, than the beginning of the season as far as projections, but he's still, he's at 8.7 points and Mookie's at 10.8 right now. So definitely relative to their price on DFS. It doesn't like Jackie too much, but I don't know if it's just not adjusting fast enough, or maybe he's going to kind of regress back towards what he was.
Maybe it knows
before.
Better.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Brad, what are you thinking in the outfield? Where are you thinking of going?
Well, on the subject of Red Sox, Bryce Brent's getting starts now that Hanley Ramirez is a little banged up. So if Ramirez is out again, I might see Brent's again. Right-handed hitter, decent pop, not a ton, but some pop, and just a good matchup in general against Yuli Seshin. So a guy to consider, very cheap on both sites, and again, good matchup.
Yeah, yeah. In a matchup like that, you just anybody cheap that can get in and be a part of crazy Red Sox scoring. I like
Yeah,
that for sure.
and he'll be at the bottom of the lineup. So maybe if you like on FanDuel, he's 2,200. Maybe if you have Mookie Betts, you have Brent's on the back end. It's a bit of a sneaky stack where you can take advantage of some interaction later on in the game, not necessarily right off the bat. Uh, Also liking Orioles tonight. Mark Trumbo, the big name, but also Joey Rickard, really good against left-handed pitcher, sneakily. It's not something that's really talked about that much, but he's got big numbers against lefties. The plate discipline's a lot better, which is usually what I look for to tell if something seems real with splits. And so looks like he's got a little bit of power against lefties, and he definitely hits for a much higher average. So a good play against Wade LeBlanc. Beyond that, I didn't see too many plays that really stood out to me. I like Shin-Soo Chua as a one-off against Irvin Santana. I don't mind Odubel Herrera, same situation, just as a one-off against Ian Kennedy. Cespedes, always a good power option. Hit one yesterday. Could hit another today against Jason Hamill.
Mm-hmm.
There's several guys like that, kind of one-off type plays. Even like a Jacoby Ellsbury versus Colin Ray.
How about your boy Mazzara getting Irvin Santana as well? Considering that.
I'm a little hesitant about Mazar right now, but I do like the matchup against Santana, who tends to be a little skewed towards fly balls, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Mazar is definitely working towards grounders right now. My only real concern with that one is the target field is pretty tough on lefty power, but when Mazar gets into it, it goes very far. So it's not a bad matchup.
Yeah, could hit his way out of there. I like that. I wrote down, had a question in the chat if we liked any Braves against Justin Nicolino, and we mentioned Tyler Flowers, and I like picking against Justin Nicolino when I can. He's one of my favorite guys to stream against just because he's a lefty and doesn't strike anybody out. He has 27 strikeouts in 55 innings this year, half a strikeout an inning, basically. But I'm gonna go with Jeff Francoeur. It's kind of fun to pick him when you can, but he's hitting lefties this year. It's the skill that he's held on to for years. He hits lefties and he has an arm, which doesn't help us in DFS, but. The thing there is, I don't know what he's going to give you against the bullpen once Nicolino's out. I don't know if Nicolino's going to go deep, but if you want a cheap third outfield option, I'm definitely considering him as a place to go. Also have Cameron Maybin getting Drew Smiley. Cameron Maybin's been hitting lefties this year. Kind of a frustrating and consistent player, but right now things look good against lefties, and so I think you can go there. Brad, are you on the Robbie Grossman train at all, or are you buying?
I'm a fan of his. I thought that maybe he had broken out in terms of his plate discipline, was getting a little more aggressive. He says that's not the case. He's told reporters that it's not really showing up in the numbers either. Look at plate discipline stuff. So that's almost a little bit disappointing. He does seem to be hitting the ball harder. He says he's stronger this year, and that's what's shown in the numbers so far. I'd still like to see him swing at more strikes, but
Sure.
Beyond that, the overall profile looks good. Kind of lowish average, very high OBP, and good power. Gives you a high floor with a moderate ceiling.
Mhm. Yeah, I like him. I have Ryan Braun getting Jaime Garcia. I really like Braun getting a lefty. Again, Jaime Garcia is not a pushover, but I think he'd be fine there. I have Nelson Cruz getting Kevin Gausman. Again, righties against Gausman are fine with me. I could definitely run into one. I'm not scared of that matchup for him at all. I wrote Pirates outfielders getting Sonny Gray, but again, it just comes down to how you feel about Sonny Gray. He's been better lately. Weird to think that the worst Pirates outfielder is McCutchen when you're picking from the three, but that is what it feels like right now. But they're all viable. in that matchup. I feel like it's Oakland. It's not a great place for him to hit at all, but I think they're all options. I like the Baltimore guys you wrote. Are you thinking about Rockies outfielders against Bud Norris? And I know you went with Arenado, or the other guy's a little more questionable.
No, Blackman and Carlos Gonzalez definitely big picks today. And Dodger Stadium's not that bad on lefty power. Obviously, you have the home road stuff with the Rockies. It's the only real team that I get into the home road splits. They're much worse on the road for obvious reasons, as we've talked about a billion times.
Yeah.
And it's always something you have to worry about.
Yeah. Bud Norris and also the Dodgers bullpen isn't that great, so I would consider some Rockies. And then I wrote Yankees. Yeah. And then I wrote Yankees outfielders. Getting Colin Ray will be fine. Matt, were there any guys that we missed either on your list or just from SaberSim that you feel like need to mention before we move on?
I don't actually remember if you guys mentioned him, but George Springer is the third highest guy on SaberSim.
Didn't have him at all.
Sorry, what was that?
I didn't have him at all.
Yeah, no. But he's the third highest, and going against Miguel Gonzalez again. It's always good upside potential there. And then as far as a cheaper option, Christian Yelich is only 3,200 on DraftKings and is pretty high on the SaberSim list. So he's definitely a good cheaper option if you're looking for some salary relief there in outfield.
Yeah, I wrote that down and I lost it in my own list, but I like Yelich a lot. Again, lefty getting Tehran. I don't think he needs to be cheap. I think that's a fine matchup for him. He's been good.
Yep.
So thumbs up, green light from me, at least for Yelich. All right, let's get into pitching. I didn't have an overwhelming number of options. Sometimes we do these Friday slates with so many games and there's so many places to go. I wrote down 8 names, but Brad, how's the pitching look to you? Where do you think you're going to go for Friday?
Actually, I like a lot of the guys. It's a lot of mid-tier action, so there's just a lot of guys who have upside, not necessarily going to get there, but either their matchup or their stuff gives them the potential to be among the top scorers. Some of those guys, Stephen Wright, we've talked about a little bit with the knuckleball. Definitely a very high volatility type pick. I wrote about him in the Daily Grind today. Last 2 starts kind of give you the idea of the range you're working with. Against the White Sox, there's 9 innings, gets 6 strikeouts. Didn't even pick up the win in that one. But that was a nice high-scoring day for him. And turned around against the Rangers, less than 5 innings, got beat up a little bit, 8 runs, 3 earned, and got knocked out quite quickly. So you're on the plus side, you got potential for a complete game. They let him go when he's working, and that's something that you don't always get these days. Pitchers who have potential to really go 9 innings every single time they're out there. The flip side is
there for sure.
You can get your lineup torpedoed by him. So it's high risk, high reward, good for GPP.
Yeah, that's I like him a lot. I'm kind of all in there. Like, yeah, he got blown up last time, but he hadn't allowed more than 3 earned runs, and he only had 3 earned runs there, but 5 unearned. So it was a bad start, definitely. He hadn't done that since May 13th, and that was the only time all year he had allowed more than 3 earned runs. Like, until last time out, had been pretty darn consistent. So for me, he weirdly feels like the ace of the day, at least with the matchup. Again, the Angels is not that scary outside of Mike Trout, and he's just pitched like an ace. It's been crazy. The biggest name on the board might be DeGrom, but he gets the Cubs. Matt, what are you thinking about DeGrom? I know you had some Cubs guys that were looking good against him. Or what do you think? And then also, what does SaberSim think about DeGrom?
So DeGrom's the 3rd highest pitcher on SaberSim. I think he's sort of a high volatility matchup today. Just the Cubs strike out a ton, but obviously have huge offensive potential. So I think DeGrom is a great GPP pick because I think people don't like targeting the Cubs, so he won't be super high owned, and he's got that strikeout upside. But I also don't mind picking Cubs players and fading DeGrom. I think almost both sides of those matchups are okay picks. Yeah, so he's expensive, but there are other more expensive pitchers on the slate. So I don't know. I'll probably throw him in, but I don't think I'll have only DeGrom in my lineups because it's just a little scary against the Cubs.
Sure. How about the flip side of that? I want to like guess who's on your SaberSim
Yeah.
leaderboard. Jason Hamill's got to be up there. He's just pitched out of his mind this year, and his weakness is left-handed batters, but it's not even that bad. But I look at the Mets lineup, talk about a banged-up lineup. Curtis Granderson is banged up a little bit, might get in there. Is Drupal Cabrera switch hitter, Neil Walker switch hitter, and then after that it's James Loney. Like in terms of left-handed batters, he should be fine. I think Jason Hamill will be just fine. Yeah, Brandon Nimmo, Kelly Johnson in there. I mean, it's Giovanni Cespedes, but he's right-handed. I trust Jason Hamill going to the Mets totally. I think that's going to be fine. Does SaberSim agree? Is he up there as well?
He's not actually. No, he's pretty far down. I mean, so today's slate, there's not really any obvious picks. There's a lot of mid-tier guys that are sort of clumped together. So Hamill's pretty far down, but he's projected for like 16 points, which is sort of middle of the road average. I think, I mean, he's pitched great as far as ERA this year, but his peripherals aren't amazing. His strikeout rate is way down from previous years, so I think that's probably the part of the reason why he's not super high up there. Is just the strikeout potential isn't quite the same as it was in previous years. But I mean, I agree. I think he's still a pretty good pick. I probably won't be taking him because I generally just go by SaberSim, but I don't think he's a terrible pick at all. He's a little bit expensive though for the. I mean, 9,300 isn't great, at least for the projection.
Sure, and being opposite DeGrom probably doesn't help there.
Yeah.
What is SaberSim like then? Who's at the top of the list there?
So the top two are Ian Kennedy going against the Phillies. I mean, I think SaberSim always likes targeting the Phillies. They haven't. I don't think they've been quite as bad maybe as last year. I'm not looking at the numbers, but I don't think their strikeout rate has been quite as bad. But still, the lineup is not strong. And so Ian Kennedy is the top, and then the second is Jaime Garcia going against the Brewers. I think the Brewers again are another team that SaberSim likes to target a lot. I think their strikeout potential is pretty high. And then DeGrom third, and after that Smiley, and then my favorite value pick for the day is Nathan Eovaldi, who is only 5,400 price tag on DraftKings, which is crazy low. His peripherals have been great this year. I mean, his strikeout rate is up, his walk rate is down, and he's pitching against the Padres in Petco. So that's kind of like a perfect storm of cheap. Outperforming his peripherals are better than his performance this year, and and going against a weak offense at Pitchers Park. So
yeah, any righty that can get some strikeouts getting the Padres and Petco needs to, you'd think, be more expensive than that. He's been real rough. His June was one to forget. He had an 8.65 ERA in June.
Yeah.
4 homers last time out against the Twins. That was in Yankees game though. I saw that one. He just couldn't keep the ball in the yard. I like that definitely as a GPP play. Like he could give you a 0 or a bad day out, for sure. But I also definitely see, especially for that cheap, he could win that game easy. He can get you strikeouts. I like that. It's not a slam dunk. It's not it's not a ton of confidence, but definitely one I'm interested in for sure. And I think he can turn things around. Brad, who else do you like on the slate at pitcher?
Michael Fulmer's a guy I like a lot. He's already faced the Rays once, completely dominated them, huge game against them. Rays aren't very good against right-handed pitching. He's got good strikeout stuff. I think he can put in a really strong outing. There's scenarios where the Tigers give him a lot of run support against Smiley. Obviously, as SaberSim points out, there's upside to Smiley too. So you don't know if you're going to get the win. It's not like an automatic situation, but there's definitely potential for run support. The high-end score is probably around 60 points on FanDuel and close to upper 20s on DraftKings. So both good scenarios for him. I don't mind Jeremy Hellickson today against the Royals. I know Ian Kennedy is definitely the better play of the two pitchers in that game, but the Royals don't really hit righties all that well either. Hellickson's having a good year aside from being homer prone, which is nothing new. The Royals aren't really a powerful lineup, but they do have a few guys who can hit home runs. So Hellickson's success will just come down to if he can avoid that long ball, I think. Otherwise, he's a solid enough pitcher and could turn in a good day.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm in on picking against the Royals now. I think that we've been avoiding them for a few years, and it's just plain not the same lineup anymore. I think that'd be just fine. The only other two guys I had, Mike Fiers getting the White Sox. I'll consider it just because the White Sox have been so flaky. Not a ton of confidence in Mike Fiers, but it would not surprise me if he had an okay day out. And he's been pitching a little bit better lately. I want to see more strikeouts from him than he's had, lately. But yeah, I'm down to pick against the White Sox. And if you're cheap win hunting, I think you could get run support against Miguel Gonzalez too. And then Johnny Cueto goes to the desert and gets the D-backs, and that's not a super easy matchup, but he's a guy that I feel like we can go back to trusting most times out at this point. Seems to have it together. So not a great matchup, especially for what you're paying for, but not something I'd shy away from necessarily. Was there anybody, Matt, on SaberSim that we didn't mention that you think we need to look at?
I think we got most of the top guys. SaberSim actually likes Kevin Gossman as far as upside. So I'm looking at their kind of percentile projections, like 85th percentile for pitchers, and he's just above Fulmer and below Fears. So obviously there's a lot of risk there, but he's another potential cheaper pick. I think we said most of the other guys that are here on this list.
We didn't say Sonny Gray, but are we just, he's getting Pittsburgh. It's not that scary of a lineup. Are we just avoiding him right now? Is he crossed off the list until he shows more consistency?
I would.
Yeah. I just think it's weird that we're just like, completely. And I'm like, yeah, I also, it's not for me. You as well, Brad?
Yeah, it's definitely a situation we can consider.
Yeah. Okay. I also, so I didn't mention this to you, Matt, but Matt DeWaskin, my co-host during the week, and I have a pitching contest where we pick streamers that are less than 50% owned every day. As part of keeping track on a spreadsheet and trying to see who can do better. He's going with Gausman in Seattle. I think I'm going to take Eovaldi. I'm gonna roll the dice a little bit there, and basically I'm not betting on Eovaldi being good. I'm betting on the Padres being bad. Is my picks. We're picking these guys that are lesser owned. Let's take a quick peek before we get out of here at the weekend slate. We don't have to break it down by any means, but looking at Saturday, just what jumps off the page to you? For me, it's the return of Rich Hill. I've been waiting. I'm so excited. It's one of my favorite stories of the year, and it's just I'm glad that his DL trip was not particularly extensive. I hope he comes back. I hope he's fine. He gets the Pirates. I think he'll do a-okay there. He is well more than 50% owned, though. I went with James Paxton. He gets Baltimore, which is not a great matchup. But I'm trusting the talent there. I think he's the most under-owned talent-wise. And Matt is taking Patrick Corbin, getting the Giants, who don't strike out much, but definitely are banged up. And so Patrick Corbin at home might have a chance against them. They're also very left-handed, so I could see him working into an okay start. Brad, what stuck out to you on Saturday as we glance at the schedule? If you were watching baseball or playing DFS, what are you looking at here?
Well, for watching baseball, I'm definitely interested in the Trevor Bauer versus Marco Estrada game. You got the red-hot Indians. Trevor Bauer's pitching fantastically. Blue Jays, obviously, a lot of offense. Could take Bauer to task if he makes a couple mistakes. And then Estrada's pitching really well, too. So on paper, excellent matchup. A couple guys who maybe aren't national media darlings, but still among the best pitchers going right now. And I'm going to be looking forward to seeing that one. Also want to watch Justin Verlander and Blake Snell. That should be a fun one. Snell's a guy whose stuff I really like from the couple times I've seen him. I think there's adjustments to be made by him to improve further. And then Verlander, he always got the shot to see a good outing from him too.
Yeah, I really like Blake Snell. That Tigers matchup is too mean though.
Oh
Like
yeah,
Saturday might be a bad
that's
day
a
for
tough
him.
matchup for him.
Yeah, but I,
That's partly why I want to see how he'll adjust to that, how he'll handle it.
yeah, he was eligible for the contest. And I'm like, talented pitcher, should be scooped up, should be more owned. Can't take him on Saturday. No way. Matt, was there anything on Saturday that either that looked good to you or SaberSim made you raise your eyebrow?
Not too much. SaberSim likes Paxton a lot too, so definitely agree with that. I mean, Jose Fernandez is going against the Braves, so that's kind of a matchup made in heaven. That'll be fun to watch for non-Braves fans.
I would ask, what's your guess over under on strikeouts? What would you put it at, Brad? Like 8.5 if he's getting the Braves? Would you set it that high? And then
Yeah, probably. The Braves aren't like such a high strikeout team. They're just very weak power. So
yeah.
It's not like they're not the Twins or the Padres where you get that matchup, you can start dreaming about 10 plus strikeouts.
Yeah.
But they're definitely a weak lineup to take advantage of.
What does SaberSim think? Where's it like putting that strikeout mark at?
It's got him at 8.85 strikeouts. So
boy, I made up a number and it was as far off as I thought it might be. Yeah. That'll be a fun matchup though for Saturday for sure. He's a exciting pitcher and like so it's a good matchup even if they don't whiff enough. And then on Sunday, Matt and I both have to go with Adam Conley getting Matt Whistler in the Braves. It's Sunday Night Baseball, Marlins at Braves. But yeah, Adam Conley's been a good streamer for us. He's under-owned. Lefty going to Atlanta is going to be just fine. The only other thing I noticed really in terms of stream is Yordano Ventura has been bad enough that he's now down to 50% owned on the line. So at least for a contest, it's like, oh, he's eligible. I still don't want him. He's going to Philadelphia. But he could be okay, but his ownership has come down a bunch. Other than that, on the slate, John Gray opposite Julio Urias is kind of interesting, kind of an NL West prospect arms thing. Guys that could have good futures. So I like that in terms of a matchup, especially since it's away from Coors. So it could be interesting for both of them. Matt, what stuck out to you on Sunday? Anything on the schedule look interesting to you?
I mean, the Cubs-Mets game should be good with Syndergaard going against Lester. SaberSim actually has the Cubs as favorites there, but it'll be definitely a great pitching matchup and great to see kind of power versus power with Syndergaard against the Cubs to see how that plays out.
I like that Lucas Giolito's going again too. He gets the Reds, and I think that he's going to be a fun guy to follow and a fun guy to watch. So yeah, I'm excited. If not watching, at least checking the box score. Also, Matt Shoemaker going to Boston. That's a good test for him. The new Matt Shoemaker. See what exactly is going on there. Like to see how he does. And Brad, what else do you got for Sunday? Anything else stick out to you?
I'm a fan of Robbie Ray. I think he's a command breakout away from being a really good pitcher. Obviously, that's not something that happens with everyone. So you can't just grab him and wait for it to happen. It's more of an asset class type thing. But he's someone I like to watch and see if I can pick up on when and if that command breakout is actually going to happen. He's up against the Giants, who are running pretty hot these days. Going to be a tough matchup for him after a few easy ones. Want to see how he responds to that.
Yeah, and I wish the Giants struck out more in terms of trying to pick against them, but they're definitely banged up. It's like I'm not as scared of them doing damage as much as I'm like I might not get as much out of it as you want. I like Robbie Ray too. I liked him in the preseason. He hasn't really delivered yet, but there's still that hope there that there's something. He's getting his strikeouts. So
the stuff's there. It's just the execution isn't.
Yeah. They seem to like Robbie Ray pretty much every time he pitches. He always seems to show up near the top of the leaderboard, at least as far as value and stuff. So, SaberSim definitely agrees with you guys, and hopefully he can get that command under control.
Yeah. Well, that should do it for us for Friday and through the weekend. Matt, obviously we talked a bunch about SaberSim, but what else do you work on, and where can people find your work?
That's the main thing I work on. So I mean, I have a weekly column on Rotographs. Usually, I'm talking about kind of SaberSim picks and then just strategies of how to use the tools and more broad DFS strategies as far as building lineups and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, definitely, there's all the projections for SaberSim are on Fangraphs, and then there's some additional tools on the site itself, and there's a 7-day trial for that too. So definitely encourage you to check it out or reach out to me on Twitter if you have any questions about it.
Yeah, Matt is on Twitter at MattR_Hunter. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, give him a follow, and then also at SaberSim is on Twitter also. Check those out. Brad, what do you got going on? Brad's on Twitter at BaseballAteam, writing everywhere. Any news in your world?
Usual mix of stuff. I've agreed to add even more Dynasty stuff to my portfolio, so that'll be starting up in mid-July after I got a working vacation coming up in a couple weeks, and then after that I'll be adding more Dynasty stuff. Otherwise,
cool.
the same old DFS and Dynasty.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Brad's on Twitter at BaseballAteam. We always think it's funny that he writes on DFS, the shortest-term fantasy stuff, and then Dynasty, the longest-term fantasy stuff, kind of bookend strategies, which is good. I'm on Twitter at HigginsFOS. Love to hear from you guys all the time. Let us know what you think of the show. The feedback helps shape it. But, yeah, thanks for joining us. Thanks to Matt for coming in. You were a great guest. Glad you could come in and tell us a little bit more about SaberSim and help us do some picks.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. All right. So for Matt and for Brad, good luck with your picks on Friday. Matt and I will be back on Monday for 4th of July. We'll get a show out in time for that, no problem. So have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you then.